Well, thanks for checking us out today. We are digging into the book of First Thessalonians, and we are on chapter 3 today. Last week, Pastor Brad preached on chapters 1 and 2, and we're moving through the book, so we're on chapter 3. Now, First Thessalonians is a very short book in the New Testament. If you're just flipping through trying to look for it, you're going to go right past it. Actually, in getting ready for this message, I was trying to find my passage and I flipped right by it and was like, okay, where is it? So you can find it. It's after kind of the four well-known epistles: Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, then First and Second Thessalonians. I highly recommend just using your table of contents or using your Bible app, and then you can just kind of scroll until you see the title 1 Thessalonians and turn to chapter 3. We're going to get there in a couple minutes, but we're into this book that Paul wrote to the church in the city of where the Thessalonians lived. And so Paul wrote this letter to the Thessalonians, and we are going through his letter to them. And when it was originally written, it wouldn't have chapters and verses. It just would have been a letter that Paul wrote to them. But since then, in order to organize it and be able to navigate our way through it, we've divided it into chapters and verses. And so we are dealing with the chunk today of chapter 3, and we're going to get there in a few minutes. So if you can pull out your Bible or the Bible app and get to 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, we're going to get there in a few minutes. Now, one of the things about this letter to the Thessalonians is that Paul is in this place where he's had to wrestle and struggle with some stuff, and he knows that the people he's writing to have had to struggle and wrestle with some stuff. And it really does apply to us today, because we can relate to a lot of the emotions and a lot of the problems that they faced. They may not be exactly the same things, but emotionally and contextually for like what's going on in our lives, there's a lot of similarities. Some of you are dealing with situations that are just hard. You may use the word tribulation. There's a lot of trials, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of hurt, there's just struggles, and life is kind of stinks. There's been a lot of loss happen recently in our town. There's been all the pandemic stuff. There's the fact that not only have we had the pandemic stuff, but it seems like the finish line keeps getting moved, and when we were supposed to be able to have more freedoms and more opportunities, and the phases we're supposed to move through, and we were supposed to be without masks, and we could get back to one service, and all the businesses could open up again, and that's been pushed back again. Or maybe you're having trouble finding good work, or you're having a hard time finding a place to live, or you were hoping to do some renovations and right now you can't afford it because of the cost of everything, or whatever it is. Maybe you got a loved one that's really sick and you can't go see them because of the restrictions in place. So life is really hard. You may be in the situation where you're looking at your loved ones, or maybe your kids, or just people that you're really close to, people you really care about, and you're worried about them. You don't know exactly what they're doing at school. You don't know what kind of situations they're in. You don't know if they're getting into trouble. Some of your loved ones are getting into trouble. They're where they live, or the people they're around, or the career they're in is causing problems for them. And you have this great heavy burden, this heavy weight, that sick feeling in your stomach that you're constantly wondering, are they going to be okay? Are they doing all right? How are they going to get out of this? And you're worried about them. And for some of you, it's a little bit more internal, and you are dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with in your life, and you just have this overwhelming feeling of being beaten and alone. You just feel defeated by everything that's going on, and it kind of feels like no one else gets it, and if other people get it, then they're not paying attention to what you're dealing with. Maybe you feel like it's not as bad as so-and-so, and so you don't even have a right to feel disappointed in your situation, but that makes you feel even more disappointed and frustrated because at least they have a valid reason to get help, and you don't even have a valid reason to get help, and so you feel even more abandoned and even more alone. Or you're looking at just trying to deal with life, and it feels like you're not able, and you don't have backup, and you don't have anything or anyone that's really able or interested in helping you. And so I imagine that most of us can relate to one of those situations, one of those things where you're going through a hard situation, you feel alone, you're worried about the people that you love and you care about, and all that weighs on you. Well, how this really connects with the Thessalonians is that they were dealing with some of this stuff, and Paul, the Apostle Paul, was dealing with those same emotions. See, Pastor Brad told us last week that Paul had only 3 weeks to plant the church. And he was there, he did his thing, and then he had to get out of town and he had to leave them. And leave them before he had finished teaching them what he wanted to teach them, and leave before he had really put all the time and effort in that he wanted to be able to put in. But he had to leave them. He had to say, okay, you guys are on your own. I got to get out of here. We're praying for you. God is going to be with you. But there is still that heaviness that he had. And so the Thessalonians are on their own. They don't have Paul there with them. Paul has to leave, and he's got to go, oh my goodness, are they going to be okay? Are people going to come in and hurt them? Or are they going to stay true to what I've taught them? Are they going to wander to the left or to the right and do something crazy? Or are they going to hold to it? And then Paul is trying to figure out, okay, I got to get back to him as soon as I can. I got to get back to him as soon as I can. I got to get there. And every time he tries to get back to them to say, hey, I'm here to help, I'm here to work with you, I'm here to make sure you're on track, every time he isn't able to. Something gets in the way, and so the only thing he's able to do is he's able to send his apprentice, Timothy, this young man, he's able to send Timothy to them. And you guys understand the weight of wanting to be someplace and not being able to be there, whether it's just you've got work or you don't have the time, or because of the restrictions you're not able to cross a border or go to this place or that place. But Paul had this desire to be with them, and he wasn't able, so he had to send somebody else. And he was so concerned that they had forgotten what he taught them, or they had done something stupid, or they had abandoned the teaching, or they had gotten themselves into some big trouble. And so he sends Timothy, and when Timothy gets there, he finds they haven't messed up. They're doing great. They've done some really good stuff, and they are holding true to the path. And so Timothy sends word back to Paul and says, listen, hey, Paul, they're good. They're good. They're doing well. God has continued to bless them. God has continued to work in them. And he's making a difference. And when Paul gets that word, it does something incredible to him. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 7 and 8, this is what it says. This is just kind of sum up the chapter and sum up what's going on and what's been going on. He says, Paul writes back to him and says, therefore, brothers and sisters, in all our distress and persecution, we were encouraged about you because of your faith. For now we really live, since you are standing firm in the Lord. He goes on to talk more about how encouraged he is and how they're growing. But let me read these two verses again. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in all our distress and persecution, all the bad stuff that's going on in our lives, we were encouraged, filled with courage, made to feel better, stronger about you because of your faith. And then he uses this phrase, for now we really live, since you are standing firm in the Lord. And that's just 2 verses out of the whole chapter. But what those verses say to me is that finding out that the Thessalonians were doing well just kind of had this radical life-altering effect on Paul. He went from being worried and concerned and stressed to being full of life because he knew they were okay. And what that says to me is that so much of Paul's spirit was needing to know that there were other good people, and that there were other people that were holding true to the faith, that he needed to know that other people were walking that journey and that they were doing all right, and that he hadn't failed them, and that God was still faithful. And that was confirmation that it wasn't all on Paul, and it was confirmation that God was still at work and God was doing something. And what I think that means for us is like with Paul, when he was able to connect with the Thessalonians, and when he was able to connect with Timothy, and he was able to have those connections, and his spirits were lifted, and he was encouraged and strengthened. It tells me that by staying connected to good souls, it's good for your soul. Because Paul stayed connected and found a way to stay connected to the Thessalonians, and finding out that they were doing well, he was encouraged, and he felt full, refilled with life. And so the thought is, the principle, the idea is for today is that staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. Staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. It's kind of like building a fire. Maybe a little bit better, building a campfire. Sometimes you build a fire in the wood stove or whatever, and you get it going, and you throw the sticks in, and you're good. But dealing with a campfire that's out in the elements, you've got to watch it a little bit more closely. And when you're building a fire, you rarely ever just throw one stick on, right? After you get get the fire started and get all the little bits and pieces and the kindling in there, and you get the fire going, and you start throwing on some bigger pieces. Now, you very rarely ever see anybody throw one piece on the fire, because there's something about it that when you throw just one piece on, the fire that's there will burn that one piece, but eventually it just something about the air getting at it. It doesn't have the heat reflecting off of other wood. It doesn't the heat doesn't jump to the other wood, and it doesn't build. And eventually the fire goes out just by throwing a single piece on. Like, really, it is better to throw 2 smaller pieces than one big piece, because something about having the different pieces closer to each other and having the airflow between them and having them there together allows the fire to burn better, allows it to catch better, allows it to have more energy and more heat, and it's a healthier fire, if you can say that, healthier fire, but it's a healthier fire. So when you're building that fire, it's better when there's other good dry wood beside the good dry wood. If it's just one piece, it will usually go out fairly quickly. In my life, I've found this by having conversations with other pastors or other people in our church or just other staff, or trying to sit in my office or sit alone and do all my Bible work. It's good, but it's better when I have those moments where I'm able to get together with other good souls and just see everything build off of each other. Like a fire, I add a little heat to them, they reflect a little heat back, they add a little bit of heat to me, I reflect it back, and all of a sudden this fire builds and builds and builds, and now we've got this roaring fire, and we're both encouraged, and we're both just filled with life. And so in our faith journey and in our lives, it's important to remember, like we see with Paul in dealing with the Thessalonians, that it is that staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. So this is what you should do. This is what we need to do. Number one, check in on each other. And that's what Paul did. That's what Paul was doing. He had to find a way. He didn't have cell phones. He didn't have the internet. He didn't have email. And he was thinking about these people. He's like, I gotta find a way. I gotta figure out a way to check on them. And so he made it a priority. And he wasn't able to go directly to them. He would have, but he wasn't able to. So he sent somebody. But he had to find a way to stay connected. And for us, it's much easier. It's a much simpler process today to stay connected. Whether it's going over to someone's house. I mean, we've got cars. We can just drive to someone else's house. They didn't have that option. It was traveling a distance, took a long time, a lot of effort. It was expensive. But we can do that. So we need to drive and see people. We need to call people, actually call people. And then it might not be the phone. It might be a video chat or something. You can send text messages. You can send emails. You can set up meetings with them. You can go for coffee, whatever it is. But these people in your life that are around you, maybe it's people that they kind of look up to you. Maybe it's your kids or people that you care about and you love and you're kind of worried about them. Maybe it's people that you admire. Whatever it is, you need to stay connected. And that means carving out the time. That's one of the biggest obstacles we have, is that we don't carve out the time. You don't schedule it. You don't say, hey, so-and-so, when can we do this? Let's set a date right now. And you set the date and you put it in your calendar and you make it happen. And that's what we've got to do, is you've got to make it happen, because staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. And so you've got to do that, and you got to talk to people. And if you need help, you talk to those that you admire. You talk to a teacher, you talk to a leader, you talk to a pastor, you talk to a mentor. You share things, and not just when things are bad, but you share things when things are good. And that helps you, that fills your soul, so that when the bad stuff and the worry and the frustration and the feeling alone hits, you're not running on empty when all that hits. You're running on full, or you're running on 3/4 of a tank of courage in life. And so when those hit you, you're not completely drained. You've still got a lot of strength. And so we need to stay connected, because staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. And yeah, I do mean good souls. So just staying connected with people that are going to drain you, they're going to drain you. And so it's really important for you to have people in your life that fill you with courage and fill you with life, and that you stay connected with them. Now, the second thing that I think we need to do is that we need to realize that sometimes we need to get help. When you're sitting there and you think, I can't do this on my own, or I don't want to do this on my own, well, you know what? Get help. Ask for help. Again, with Paul, he wasn't able to do it on his own. He wasn't able to stay connected even. He wasn't able to check on the Thessalonians. He wasn't able to teach them directly anymore. He had to get help. And he was able to teach them through the letters, but he wasn't able to get the letters to them himself. He had to send Timothy and other people to go to them. He couldn't do it on his own. He needed to get help. And so if you need help figuring out who do I connect with? Who's a good person to have a conversation with? Talk to me. Talk to one of the pastors here on staff. Join a small group. Get locked into a micro group. Find a mentor. Come to the leadership seminars we've got starting up this month. Check out these things and ask, how do I stay connected? How do I build these good relationships? I need somebody to help me deal with these issues. I need somebody to help me process these things. I just need to talk this out. It doesn't have to be anything crazy hard. It can just be, I'm worried about my kids and I feel alone in dealing with my kids, and I just need somebody walking beside me a little bit, somebody I can talk to help me sort through this stuff. So you gotta stay connected, and you gotta sometimes get help. Because staying connected to good souls is good for your soul. And when you do that, you end up feeling courage. You see the hard stuff, and it's scary, but you feel like you can tackle it, and you want to tackle it, and you're going to tackle it anyways. And the fear isn't going to stop you. You feel like you can go through it. It feels like you can keep going. It feels like you've got the energy to last. You end up with more clarity to stay on the right path, and you end up being in this place where you end up with hope and joy. And frankly, if you've got hope and you've got some joy, you can last through a lot of stuff. You can handle a lot of stuff. And by staying connected with good souls, you get courage, you get this feeling of endurance, you get filled with hope and joy. And when you've got that, you can do a lot. So like we see with Paul and the Thessalonians and Timothy and the Thessalonians, stay connected because it's good for your soul.